Well, hello and welcome to this edition of Tipping Sacred Cows. I have Dr. Jason Peters with me today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the state of the church in America. And so let me lead with this, Jason. Tell me a little bit about your background as a pastor, because I know you've done a lot. You're not just a seminary professor, you're also a pastor of a church in Dripping Springs. But even prior to that, talk to us a little bit about your previous history as a pastor.
Yeah, so I got involved in ministry as a campus pastor at University of Texas. From there, had a short stint with a ministry called Young Life, and then joined a part of a church planting group in Austin, in West Austin, and then that group then moved to first it was North Austin, River Point. And then that church moved and we replanted there in West Austin. From there was a church merger that I was a part of.
Okay.
And then there was kind of a church takeover. And then I went and planted again, but by myself as the lead pastor in kind of Central West, Westlake area. 6 months later, we merged with a church, moved up north. I was there for 2.5 years. And then took a job, felt God calling me out of that and into something a little different situation, church. And so then went to South Austin, went to what was Oak Hill Bible Church. COVID hit. Well, then we moved out of our location and rented for a year. That was a disaster, by the way.
Sounds like
and then God dropped $6 million in our lap. So we bought a place out in the Dripping Springs, Driftwood area, right across the street from the Salt Lick. Great barbecue place, although will give you incredible heartburn. So be careful.
Been there, done that.
That's right. And so so I took the job with Oak Hill in 2019. In 2021, I believe we changed the name to Faith Bible Church. Okay. In 2022, we moved to the Driftwood, Dripping Springs area, and we've been there since, and we've gone through a complete church remodel along the way.
Wow.
So that's kind of my...
That's quite a history. You know, in my past, I've served as youth pastor, associate pastor. I've done children's ministry, worship, assimilation, small groups, and then eventually moved to be a senior pastor. Has your journey primarily been being the lead pastor in the church, or
no? So I've been a college pastor. I've done student ministry. I've done men's ministry. I've been a family pastor of a church that didn't even have very many families. And then I've been a co-lead pastor. That was an adventure. Okay. That's not, I would not advise that. Okay. But we can get into that later. And then also, I've been a lead pastor.
Well, you've got a lot of experience, and looking at the church, the church has changed so much. I think about when I first got involved in church ministry back in 1990, as a youth pastor, and just being a part of the dynamics of churches in general. Been involved in 4 different churches and different capacities on staff, but church ministry has changed a lot. So how would you describe maybe some of the biggest issues, challenges, if you will, facing the church in America today, especially as it pertains to the local church and the churches that you've served in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the doctrinal purity with exegetical humility is always going to be a huge challenge. At least with Protestantism, the charge level against the Protestant church by kind of a surge in Catholic internet and social media apologists is how many denominations we have. And so, unity as far as Protestants go in the church, it is a struggle. It's incredibly difficult to maintain consistent unity in the church. And I think that hurts the movement of it, on all accounts. It just hurts the church movement in America. I also think the idea of the pastor in America has to shift. We polarize pastors.
Okay.
We either make them CEOs, pay them outrageous amounts of money to run a company called the church, and you see that in a lot of the seeker-friendly movements.
Yeah, a lot of mega churches. Yeah.
Or we make the pastor a peasant, a monastic who needs to barely get by, because even though he's the pastor and the spiritual leader of the church, we not dare give him any more money than he needs to just get by, or it could corrupt him, which is nonsensical as well. So I think that getting back to where we're actually caring and shepherding and taking care of our pastors in America, I think would solve a lot of issues actually that we see in the American church right now.
So there's something between the private jet and the air-conditioned doghouse and the parsonage that's falling apart in the back of the church.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, that's good. As you think about the culture in America, how do you see maybe the impact? You talked about unity being an issue in the church. That's something that I've experienced, and it's been more and more difficult, I think, as the years go by, to maintain unity in the church body. And it seems like there's a lot of disunity in our culture. Obviously, a lot of polarization with regards to individuals, not just politically, but in other realms. Maybe compare a little bit about, how the culture can impact the church dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tribalism that's in the culture like never before. Have your little group of people, and then if someone disagrees with you, they hate you kind of mentality. And I think that's drifted over into the church, where you have your little group of people, and if it's particular doctrinal idea that you think is primary to the gospel, then if someone disagrees with you, then they automatically hate you. And so there is very little place for constructive dialogue between, say, denominations, between assuming both believe in the authority of Scripture, so you have a starting point and a common ground. There's not oftentimes that a conservative Methodist and an Orthodox Presbyterian and a Bible church guy will get together and actually have theological dialogue over things to see if maybe there is a unity in the gospel or not. And I think that is a cultural thing that has come into the church, where churches are less and less willing to really to support other like-minded churches, because there are no like-minded churches, because you have your little tribe, and if you don't look exactly like your little tribe, then they hate you. And it's just the polarization in the culture is bleeding into the church, and we have to stop it, because the Bible is all about wisdom and relationships, both with God and with people, and having that view ultimately it's self-destructive, that tribalism idea.
I've noticed over 35 years, you've been in pastoral ministry about 15 years, something like that, quite a shift with regards to trust. There's a lack of trust, it seems, in the authority structures of the church, whether that be a senior pastor-led church or an elder-led church or committee-led church, congregational-led church. Obviously, there's a lot of there are a lot of different varieties of church governance. But particularly as it relates to the elder board and or the senior pastor, how have you noticed that distrust, if you will? Has that been a growing dynamic in your years of ministry? Or?
Man, I think it's always there.
Yeah,
I think it's people. I think people are the problem. Yes.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to us. You know that better than I do. You've been in ministry a lot longer and seen everything under the sun. But I don't know if the distrust in leadership has grown, but maybe it's just more publicized. So in that sense, is, because the prevalence of, and so in 1990, 1995, you didn't have the social media police for when a pastor falls, or that you do now. And so now every pimple on the face of the church is highlighted, whereas before, it wasn't so much. So maybe the things were going on, but for the average person who's scrolling through Facebook and they see, once that algorithm, captures them, and they see church leader, church musician, church whoever fall, embezzles money, has affairs, whatever, then in that sense, maybe people's distrust for the church and for church leadership it is growing, largely because it's just being advertised more.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it truly is growing, but it's growing not because of the dynamics that cause it, I guess, have always been there.
Sure.
Our sin nature has always been there,
Yes.
but now people trust even less. And of course, with all the polarization and trust and distrust with politicians and, all the various movements, whether the COVID, the vaccines and the masks and everything, people have polarized and divided over those things. And I think there's been a lot of tension that's existed, and that bleeds over into people's lives. So they take that with them when they come to church on Sunday mornings. And so it just seems like people are in a more defensive posture. And then, again, there's so many dynamics we could talk about with regards to, how people view those in authority over them and whether there's trust there. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're definitely in a very anti-authoritarian culture right now, and a very anti-honor culture as well. So we don't honor the people and respect the people that lead us as well. So it's a difficult dynamic to be a pastor or ministry leader right now, because not only do they push back on authority, but they also just push back on respect and on honor, because to your point, in the back of their mind is, well, you could be the guy that's actually having affairs or embezzling the money or doing the outrageous stuff. So not only am I going to push back on your authority, but I'm also really not going to honor you as being called by God into this situation. Or sorry, this position in the church. And so I think both of those things contribute to where we're at today.
That's a good point, because I know when I go and have traveled on mission trips in different countries, there's a lot more respect and honor for the position of pastor than we see here in the United States. And of course, our whole culture, our country was founded on revolutionary ideas and pushing back. And
right.
So in some ways, that's a bit of our history, being a little more autonomous, rebellious, whatever you want to say. But that's good. So what are some of the toughest challenges facing pastors today? Somebody that's in your role as a senior pastor of a church, how do you see their dynamic and maybe how we can even pray for pastors today?
Sure.
But some of the biggest challenges facing senior pastors, particularly in the church.
Yeah, I mean, you know this better than most, but a lot of it will depend on the size of your church, how to nuance the answer to this question. But I mean, I think the busyness of life right now is a massive deterrent to effective pastoral ministry. And so pastors, at least in my experience, don't spend as much time in prayer or in God's word because they simply have so many things to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you just think about if they have kids and the proliferation of the idol of sports in America. How much ministry do you get done if you have multiple kids in multiple sports when people get off work? Very little to zero. Or your family's constantly divided. Mom's constantly taking them to sports and pastor dad is constantly going and doing ministry things. And then your kids are mad at you because you're doing ministry things and they want you to invest in time with them with sports. So it's things like that. And then, just the idea of the pastors as having no honor and constantly having to work to please his congregation. I think consumerism is one of the toughest challenges for pastors today as well.
That's good.
No,
that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? Like in your years of experience, I mean, what have you seen that's been something that you can say, kind of in all of these generations in pastoral ministry? What's something that just continues to plague pastors?
Well, I think you've hit it on the head. For me, I found myself. I have a tendency to want to please people. And so Galatians 1:10 was one of the first verses I memorized as a new believer. Am I now trying to please God or men? If I was still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ Jesus. And I memorized that when I was 18 years old, and then, I get to be now 60, and that's still something I struggle with, is that people pleasing. And when you have that kind of mentality, it becomes difficult. So when issues arise in the church, I want to gather the people together and work things out relationally and try to get everybody on the same page. It's one thing to do that with 80 some odd adults, where I started, versus 1,000 or more, and trying to work out those dynamics. And so I think in some ways, that whole concept of it, do you have enough time? That there's not enough time oftentimes to bring all the parties together, to get everybody unified. And at some point you have to make decisions. And if people aren't happy, you have to move forward with that. And I learned that over the years, but I still think there's that desire in the back of my mind. There's got to be a way that everybody can win. Everybody can be happy. And that's not the case in church ministry. So that becomes a tension point. And then I have a tendency personally just to take more and more on. And so I found myself spiritually, I learned over the years, and I would say my last 5 to 10 years in ministry, I spent more time in prayer than I did my first 20, 25 years of ministry, which was good. That was a good thing. And spiritually was strong, but at the same time, my spiritual walk was going well, but I was physically and emotionally burning out. Just as the church kept getting bigger and bigger, and we're expanding and the staff gets bigger, trying to manage all the staff and counsel the people and be there relationally. Sometimes it's even though I had people doing these things, but sometimes I needed to be at the memorial service. I needed to be at this wedding. I needed to counsel this individual. I had to run interference over here, conflict management, whether it's with people in the church or the staff members. And then you're trying to organize the church and cast a vision and lead everybody that way. And you're leading the elder board. And, oh, by the way, Sunday's coming and you need to have a message. And so just the sheer volume of to-dos each week. And then it left me without that kind of balance that I needed, that work-life balance, but being there for my wife, for my kids, for my grandkids, just keeping myself healthy, just exercising, doing those kinds of things, just trying to find the time to do everything. There simply wasn't enough time,
right?
And that becomes challenging. And so I think the answer to that, as I see it, is I needed a more clearly defined role. The way our governing structure was set up, our principles and practices, it was senior pastor's pretty much responsible for everything. Now, he can delegate just about everything with the approval of the elders, but at the end of the day, the buck stops here, and it always came back. And so in a sense, there was no job description purposefully, but then where do you draw those lines? Without that, it becomes very difficult, and especially if you're not really good at setting up boundaries. And so some of it's on the pastor to set up those boundaries, but some of it's on the people with regards to their expectations. And are they reasonable expectations, which I don't know that we always have those.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good word.
Yeah. So anyhow, I think looking at the state of the church in America today, what are some things maybe that you would say for people who are out there, who are in the church, and they say, man, okay, I see that it's tough on pastors, as a lay person, as a believer, someone who wants to really get behind my pastor, get behind the church. What are some ideas you would give them? Like, if you were speaking as a pastor, here's how you could help me to make my role more efficient.
Just to use kind of a preposition switch. Metaphorically, how do we get behind pastors? I think the way we get behind pastors is getting beside pastors. I think that's good. That's a good word. I think that is the key, is when you come to a church, what is your goal? We people come into Faith Bible Church and awesome, amazing people. A lot of times, though, what I've heard in the past, not just at Faith Bible Church, but the ministries I've been in, is I'm looking for this, and it will be more of a program, or it will be more of a culture, which aren't bad things. but very rarely, if ever, do I hear someone come in and go, hey, I'm looking to be able to serve in these areas and to be able to give money into this and to be able to take the burden off of ministry leaders in this way. Like, I'm looking to come and give my life to the bride of Christ. I'm not just looking to come in and consume something from the bride of Christ. And so I think that's what I would say as a pastor. How can you bless your pastors? Involvement. Involvement is the number one thing I think that can discourage a pastor like nothing else, or can encourage a pastor like nothing else, is to see that people actually care about the ministry of the church, that it's their church, and that they want this church to succeed and to do what God has called it to do. And so, yeah, I mean, just as a pastor, and I want to kick this question to you as well, but involvement, man. Just don't get too far behind him when you could be beside him in the work of the ministry.
I love that. That's a great word picture there. And just coming alongside and saying, hey, how can I help you out? And not just, well, the pastor does this, the pastor does that. And yeah, when you think about, being a support, a lot of times it's just getting involved and being willing to help. And we've had servants like that in the church that are just so remarkable, and that, hey, I'm not here for a personal agenda. I'm here for Christ's agenda. And I'm willing to submit myself to the authority of the elder board. And this is the decision they've made. It may not be the decision I would make, but I trust that God has put that authority structure in place. And I'm willing to get behind that and get beside that and get in front of that even, and
That's
just
true.
move forward and move that vision ahead. Real quick, you've been involved in 5 different church planting ventures, if you will. You've told me that 2 of them went really well, 2 of them not so well, and one of them right now you're in the middle of kind of revitalizing a church. Maybe a quick word about why you think church planting is important, planting new churches and getting out there, why that's important, and what you would say to anybody that might be either interested in church planting or being a part of a church plant.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, before we went on air, but if you church plant, you don't inherit all the church's dirty laundry. So,
Yeah, that's good.
Or bad mannerisms. Or,
Right. What do they call it?
Yeah, you don't inherit any of those things. So there's a beauty to church planting, and it requires just so much faith and so much trust in the Lord to move that church plant into an actual sustainable church. And so I would say that, church planting is a way to really just grow your faith like really few other things. And it's a way to be able to seek the Lord and to really maybe do something unique. Not doctrinally, obviously, but
Right.
depending on the culture or subculture here in America that you're in.
Yeah.
I would say that about church planting. Also, I think churches are closing left and right. The mainline denominations we know are dying off. There's people floating around in your neighborhood, at your grocery store, in your workplace that still love Jesus, but really maybe don't have anywhere to go. And the current denominations maybe that are around them, maybe they're not, they don't jive with those. And so I would say that because church plants our churches are dying and pastors are quitting at incredible rates, church planting will always be necessary, because church planting is something that we do because we're sent people and we're sent to lost people.
Yeah.
So anyway, that would be the short answer.
No, that's good. That's good. And I think moving forward, that's something as part of True Grace Ministries, our nonprofit, that we're interested in seeing happen. And we've got lots of individuals and resources that can make that happen. If you're out there and you're interested in, man, I want to go maybe start a church, but I need to be equipped to do that, or I would like to join a church that's getting started and be a part of that grassroots movement, be sure to contact me, contact us at truegraceinfo@gmail.com. You can email me there, and all the information's on our website as well. So, Jason, thanks for being here the last 3 weeks.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us and doing these interviews. If you missed the previous 2, I would encourage you to get on and check them out. That's it for today, and we'll see you next time on Tipping Sacred Cows.